What's on your mind?
What do you want?
Me?
It's rhetorical.
Oh,
So relax. Yeah, it's all right. I know. Scary to be asked that though, isn't it? Because I think it's the hardest question in the world. What do you want? To be able to answer that authentically.
no, it's a shit question. You have to
Yeah.
be more specific.
Well, I'm not going to be.
You know how when you ask people, think of 10 white things, and it's hard, but if you say think of 10 white things in the fridge, they can think of 20?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. Because we have an election coming up, right?
Yeah.
And traditionally, an election is a time where the whole country gets to go, here's what we want. I don't think we know what we want.
How could we possibly? We don't even know who we are and what we're doing today.
Exactly. So this question of what do we want is, I think, one of these questions which is paradoxically really important to answer, but at the same time, really, really hard to define.
No, this is really easy. The reason we find that question so hard is because it's too big and it doesn't have an answer. We need really focused questions that are useful for people.
Like, what do you want for
Like,
breakfast?
what would you like the country to be like for your children? What would you like your work to be like in 10 years? How would you like us to preserve our environment? What you need to
Very
you need these.
good.
I think that part of the thing that makes it really difficult to move forward when we get trapped in a thought talk fest and we get stuck in our own heads and we just come together and have conversations once every 3 months about the same thing, which is what people do, right? Is we never take the courageous leap of putting some focus on it. Because what focus needs you to do is say these things matter more than other things. So as soon as you channel that conversation into what do you want for the environment? What do you want for children's well-being? What do you want for the economy? What do you want for your neighbours? As soon as you do that, what you're implicitly saying is those things are more important than the 150 other considerations
I love that
we've
thinking.
got.
I love that. You know what I don't see though is us actually even having conversations at that specific level.
Yeah.
I think we're too busy on putting fires to bed and running around going, I just want sleep. So like really basic things. Whereas what about if we could have a conversation about what do we actually want as a country? What do we actually
I reckon
want?
there's a paradox here. I reckon
Yeah.
we spend part of our time going, what's happening tomorrow? And the other part going like, yeah, I think we need to do like big picture, a different economy,
Yeah.
right? So we have these two extremes. And the meeting point is channeling those conversations into really useful focus slots. And that's really hard because it needs you to actually let go of some of that vague, ambiguous, jargony, nebulous stuff that you get to talk about when you do this and go, yeah, but what does that mean for sustainability of our rivers in the next 20 years?
That's right.
That's hard.
So I think there's a sweet spot, right, between, so I call it, there's a big question,
Yeah.
which is the big, what do we want,
Yeah.
life purpose, whatever. And then there's now questions, which is like, how do I get my boss to agree with my thing, whatever my thing is, right? And somewhere in the middle is the sweet spot
That's
question.
the bit.
And that's where we want to be able to
Yeah. And you can't start there, right? So in order to be able to channel what you need that middle question to be, you absolutely have to start by going, hey, let's throw the frame open and just go, wow, what is this all about?
Yeah,
what are the
exactly.
450 things we need to consider? But you can't stay there. You can start there. But if you actually want to start focusing and making commitments and moving ahead, you have to channel and go, you know what, 120 of those 150 things, they're important. But if we dilute our energy there, we're not going to get anywhere.
Absolutely. So focus is key.
Yeah. So after a while, abstraction becomes an accountability cop
And
out.
on the other hand, thinking too short term
Yeah.
is also useless as well. So how do I just get through this workload? How do we just nail the next 2 weeks?
Yeah.
If that's all we're doing,
And then
we're
you
not
just get
really
this 2
creating a
weeks in
future.
perpetuity, and then you're like,
Yeah, that's right.
oh, weird, it was 10 years, bloody hell.
How about all that to-do list? Yeah, it's still there.
Did you keep a diary as a teenager?
Nah.
No, it's
I was
really,
drinking.
it's a real girl thing,
Didn't
isn't
have
it?
time for that.
Yeah, I had kids to raise. So, but if you've ever read, so teenage girls were big on diaries, at least when I was a teenage girl, and I'm pretty sure my teenage girl is. And you like read an old diary entry from a year ago, and you're like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. This year ago me was such a loser. And I reckon we can do that with to-do lists. Like if you pick up a to-do list in your diary from even 3 months ago and you read what your pressing thing was that day, you're like, it didn't matter.
On the other hand, I look at some of my journals from in my 20s when I was asking what do I want out of my career.
Yeah.
And I've got this old journal when I spent a whole lot of time in Canada, got to England, and I was like, London, this is crap, it's way too busy. So I immediately went to Ireland. And I was ready to get back into professional work after about 18 months of just ski bumming and working on fishing boats and all sorts of stuff. And I just took a journal, drank a lot of Guinness, and just asked the question, what do I want out of my work?
Yeah.
And I still look at back at that journal now, and I go, that was a defining period of my life where I asked really good questions, and it set me on a trajectory that I'm still on today.
And it still feels good?
What I do?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, no, what you penned.
Oh yeah, like when I look at that, which I don't
Yeah.
look at very often, but it's still true. So there was a lot of the answers to those questions, like work with professional people, work with high energy people, work with because I was an accountant before, like work with people, not numbers, right?
Yeah.
All of these things were just there. So asking, what do I want?
Yeah.
In my career. I love the way you go, let's get really specific.
Yeah.
That actually has been, what's that? That was like 27 years ago or something.
Which kind of goes to show that what you didn't walk out of that pub with was an implementation plan.
The pub. It was a whole country. It's called Ireland. It's a big pub.
Ireland, the pub. We just offended a whole
Pub called
country.
Ireland.
What you didn't walk out with was an implementation plan with 25 steps and timeframes in it, right? But instead it was, these are the principles that guide
That's right.
what I want out of my
Absolutely.
life.
And that's what we need.
And that stays there.
That's
and
right.
that guides you.
And that's just your decision-making process is so much easier when you have those principles, right?
I ran a webinar last week on nailing your strategic plan, and you know we did this What's on Your Mind episode the other day, and I did a one-liner, I can't remember what it was now, about systems, and I was like, oh, I've got to capture that. I did another one of those on the fly the other week, and it's not what we decide. It's deciding how to decide, and it's the idea that good strategy isn't about going, here's what we'll do. It's about going, here's what matters to us, so that when things keep going, blah, 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 we know what we're doing in response to it.
Yep.
And that's what you did with your journal and your
Totally.
20s.
Absolutely. So, what sort of questions are you asking? Are you asking the big woolly, what do we want out of life? What's it all about? Or are you asking the now questions, which is about how do I get better sleep? We reckon it's somewhere in the middle. How do you get to that point? And what will happen if you did?